Okay, so welcome back to the channel, guys. We got some work done last episode on this whole section here. So what we began was the 3-link assembly, and particularly the 3-link assembly as it pertains to the chassis. So we got the lower links braced up. First we started by installing some cross tubing here and some diagonal bracing, as well as a tie-in bar here that will tie in the perimeter of the frame and give it a nice cross brace. And then we started to take up these guys here. These are our lower 3-link mounts, and they're mirror images of each other, and we got those welded in very accurately. So I was super happy with how these turned out. We did ream these out just a smidge so that we have a nice pin fitment there. So when we run a pin through there, we're gonna run probably a shoulder bolt of some sort, and that will give us a nice tight fit, and it'll keep the rear suspension from back and forth on the truck. So in this episode, we're gonna keep moving. We're gonna get this upper brace. So I'll show you guys what we got going on here. I 3D printed these little guys. They're just miter, like measuring gauges, cut on a 45, and I left a little tang out here so I can draw a line and get a good measurement. So these are going to be 25.5 inches across, ideally. This tube is 083 inch and 5/8 chrome moly. So my buddy Calvin bent this up for me because I don't have my die yet for this size. So we're gonna go ahead and get this cut, and then we're gonna see if we can throw it up in between there and make sure we didn't cut it too short. Okay, so we got the tube cut, some nice 45s here, and I had to just hand dress it ever so slightly. See if I can get this stuck in here one-handed. So I had to hand dress it ever so slightly to get the fitment right. But you can see here, pretty tight gap, and there's a pretty tight gap over there. It's just a little higher right there. So when it's all fitted up, it'll look kind of like this. And then we're gonna get tubes, and they're gonna connect between here and there, and then I'll sort of brace everything out. But I like the look of it. It's definitely a beefy tube. This won't actually mount to the frame rails. I'll see if I can just sort of sit that without dropping it. There'll be a riser here, and that riser is actually where that's gonna mount because it needs to extend a little bit forward. Due to the radius that the die had to bend the frame rails and where I want the 3-link bar, how long I want the 3-link bar, it just needs to extend out a little bit. But the other thing is, when that's there and there's that riser here, the cage down tube will actually intersect that, and I'll make for a very strong node in the chassis, and that will definitely stiffen things up a touch. All right, so next up we're gonna get these little doohickeys all welded up. So these have a 1 5/8 diameter like recess in there, and then how they are set up is this will mount in there, and you can see it sort of orients itself and retains itself. It's a nice thing about having the plasma. And then this line, even though there's a step there, there's a tangent there that we can weld to, and that should give us a nice weld here. That's gonna support the link when it's getting pulled back. And then also up here, we're gonna weld this across the front of the tube, and that will also give it some support. So there'll be a fair amount of weld on this joint, but we're gonna go ahead and start getting these tigged up. Okay, so I accidentally didn't turn the camera on, but whatever. I use these 1, 2, 3 blocks and clamp them in here, and then use them to form my 90-degree angle. These are still really hot. So we got the back sides welded in. We got the fronts in here, nice and all tigged up. And these are equal and opposites. So when you sit them in here, they look lovely. Nice symmetrical pairs with each other, and you get the idea. So there'll be a 2-inch space in between these when you mount them onto the tube, and that's the next thing we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and lay the tube out and see if we can get these mounted up on there. So these should be plenty of strong for any 3-link forces that we have, up to 1,000 horse. So hopefully it all works out. Okay, so this is what we got going on. I have two 5/8 bolts going through the mounts here, squeezing down on a 1, 2, 3 block. Then down here at the bottom, I also have another 1, 2, 3 block between there to sort of hold it. The 45-degree bar is up on the 3 side of the 1, 2, 3 blocks, getting it off the ground. And then I leveled the probe out to the table, or not the probe, the level indicator out to the table. And we're about a third, 3/10 of a degree up right now. So I'm just gonna try to shim this out, and then we're gonna get this all tacked up. And then that should be plenty accurate for what we need. I was measuring off with a caliper here to these center marks here that I use with the plumb bob to make sure I mark the center. One thing is, I want the mount to be centered in the frame, not necessarily in the tube. You'd like them to be the same thing, but that's not necessarily the case, because if with these bends and stuff like that, if you have half a degree here or half a degree there and maybe a slight, 16th here or 16th there, you can really get wonky in the frame. So I made sure to plumb bob it out and then scribe a line with the marker, or not marker, punch here, and just to make sure that I really have a good center. That's where it will fall in the truck. So let's go ahead and burn this in. Okay, so this is the finished product. You can see here we got it all welded top and bottom. Underneath here is nice and tigged up, so it's all wrapped around there pretty good. I cannot get in the inside right now, but I did sort of tuck the corners, which I think should be fine. I'm debating right now, I don't know. So right now, this is not a lot of weld area pulling back on this inner weld here, up in there. So that's what the point of these wings are supposed to do. They're supposed to support this plate in tension and start loading the tube here. I'm debating whether or not I want to add another one of those right under here, like make like a little partial winglet that doesn't get into the heim joints here, and just sort of put it up in here and tie just a little bit more weld to this plate and firm it up a little bit. This is surprisingly light. Like, I don't know how to convey it on the camera, but it's not heavy at all. So I was sort of concerned, getting bigger and bigger on tubing and thicker plate, how heavy it would get. But with the gussets in there, or not the gussets, but the little cutouts and reliefs and stuff like that, yeah, it's pretty lightweight. So happy with this. I'll do some math and see if I really need to add any more support. That's actually probably a lot of weld area as far as, if you ever do stress calcs and stuff like that on joints, you'd be surprised how strong just a little bit of weld can be. So we'll figure it out, but next thing up, we're gonna hopefully get the plasma cutter running. I got head gaskets coming for the air compressor. And then once that gets going, we're gonna make the risers. And then that's where that beam will come across here, and we'll get that tigged in. So keep on moving. Okay guys, so off camera a little bit ago, I got the plasma cutter up and running. I cut these pieces out, I ground them all down so they're ready to start bending up and getting ready to fab. What these are going to be risers. Here's both sides of the riser. This is a top plate that gets bent in 45s on the ends. And this section here sort of goes in the middle and acts like a support brace in the middle, keep it from collapsing. And where these are going to go, I'll just take one of these to show you, is right here on the chassis. So they will be flush with the outside of the chassis, 2 inches wide, here and here. And these are going to be risers where the chassis is going to come together. So there's going to be a 45-degree cage back bar that's going to connect into the top of this. And then on the inside here is where our 3-link mount, this guy, is going to be welded on. It needed to be extended out mainly because that 3-link geometry where it needs to be, your tube angle would have to be too extreme. If I got the projection way out there, it'd be like a 70-degree angle, which is too tight to miter into a frame rail. So what we're doing is we're extending this out about 3 inches, the frame rail that is, with these risers, and that lets us get away with a 45-degree angle for that piece right there. So that's what we're doing. We're gonna go ahead and mark these up and get them bent, and then start welding. Okay, so we got those all burned in. I'm gonna need to make a second pass on some of these outside corners where the gap got a little large. It's sort of a convex bead taper or bead shape. So we'll build that up with the second pass. They're just hot right now, and I ran out of gas. Not quite, but I'm down to like 100 PSI. So not gonna be able to finish those up tonight. I'll go get more gas and then lay another set of beads over top of these. I'll probably grind this section down and flush it out because there's some things that are welding onto these and I don't want the weld joints to get in the way. So we'll go ahead and blend them in all nicely and they'll look great. And that's what we'll do next. Okay, so it's the next basically weekend and I did get another second pass on these guys and they're looking good to go. Should be nice and solid. A little heavier than I would like, but I didn't want to put holes in this because put holes on the inside, but didn't want to put holes so I could seal it to the chassis. Mainly because I didn't want moisture ingress into the chassis. I wanted it to be sealed. So what we need to do now is we're going to go ahead and weld these on here. In order to do that, we need to trace the line back, put a vertical line, and I want to put a horizontal line so I can get an idea of where I'm at positionally. We'll get these tacked in and then we'll keep moving along. In order to get these refined as far as right where I want them, I'm going to clamp a piece of tubing to this 2x4 here. And then we'll clamp this sideways to that. And that will make sure that this interface in here will be lined up. I want the interfaces true to each other. I don't care as much about the outer faces. So any tolerance will go to the outside. So let's get started. Okay, so I'll show you what we got going on here. I drew the line out right here to the right, it's actually right here. I moved this plate. And then put the plate here, ran a line up. You can see we're here, and that is the vertical line. And then went off of this, I think it was 18¾ inches, and you can see under here as a horizontal line. Everything lines up nice and good. So we got tubing clamped down here to this face of the frame rail, which is where we want this surface to mount up as close as possible. And then we got this clamped on here. So that side will be pulled in to that face. So any inaccuracy in the width of this, millimeter or so, that'll all be sucked in. So we'll get this, next we're gonna do, before we do the other side, we're gonna actually tack this one up and get it sort of situated. And then we'll move all of the clamps over to the other side and get that one going. Okay, so after a bunch of cutting and grinding and welding, these are on there, good and solid. I did run 2 passes, and you'll still notice that there's a little bit of a depression there. but I'm not really worried about it. It's 3/16 material. There's like probably like a 1/4 inch radius on here. So we got a good, nice deep bevel on there and prep. So 2 passes should be plenty of strength to hold these where they're gonna go. Plus there's a ton of weld area. I'm gonna call it where it is so I don't put too much stress into the chassis as far as warp wise. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and get this guy down there sort of placed up where it needs to be. This is gonna be a tricky part for me because it's going to be, it needs to be oriented this way, level, and then height wise. And so we're gonna start laying this out and hopefully get dialed in. Okay, so you just saw me getting this all leveled out. We got it 16 inches from the center line of the middle hole to the top of this plate, which puts it 14.5 inches from the bottom of the frame rail. That's the important dimension. Then from here to there, we have 19 inches from the center line of the hole. I have to sort of hold this over just a touch to get it lined up, but you can see the plumb bob string running and just touching the face of this. So that's good. Positionally, the hole's where it needs to be. So the next thing I did was I started to level this cross member out right here, forward and back, side to side. And I got it everything within about 1/2 degree, but I could go tighter on the mount, but then these out here would be slightly off. So what I did was I matched the outside dimensions forward and back by putting the magnetic level and measuring from the inside to there and from the inside to there, and sort of got it where I needed this way, like canted. Because you can have this 19 inches forward, but like have it way like this and keep that relative hold position the same. So you gotta make sure it's, you know, not skewed either way. And then we did the same thing in this direction. That should show up in the level here, but regardless, we checked it and we went from this plane with a magnetic level and then measured up to that, and that looks all pretty good. So we're all within 1/2 degree in any direction that I could measure. Forward and back were good, and the general position of the tube in the chassis isn't kicked one way or the other, this way, this way, this way, you know, all that good stuff. So what I'm gonna do next is get the plasma out, or not the plasma, the TIG out again, and we're gonna go ahead and sort of just tack this in and get all the other crap away from it, and then we'll burn it in solid. All right, so we got that all done. These are all tigged in nice and pretty. Got some nice welds there. I'm happy with that all the way around. So this is done. This is that 1 5/8 chromoly tube looks like it's gonna be plenty beefy. The dimension between everything looks good. The next up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on getting bracing from here to these corners. So you're gonna see me make tie-ins. So it'll be 2 tubes, 1 1/4 tubes, tied off there. But for now, that's it tonight. And I'll come back out maybe tomorrow and see if I can get those coped in. Okay, so it's the next day. Got some nice sunshine out today, so we're gonna leave some airflow through this shop. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to get this tube and another one. This is a scrap tube that I had from before. I had a bad coping job. And we're gonna get them cut to length, and then we're gonna start notching them. So this is gonna be an 1 1/4 notch down here, 1 5/8 notch, and this is gonna sit in about a 40-degree angle like that and connect those 2 tubes. So let's get started on that. Okay, so I'll show you guys what we have fitment wise, and I set the tubes over here. Grab one. I got both of these fitting really nice, but we need some additional steps. So This is the right direction, wrong direction. Okay, so here's the nice fitment of the tube. You can see it coming up, but you'll notice it's long, and this is intentional. So what I wanna do is this tube is extending out past the middle too far. That's because in here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a 45-degree cut away from that tip, and we're gonna sink this tube in against that further. So there's gonna be sort of like a partial intersection there. And we're gonna try to do the same up here. We're gonna take a little bit off this end here, and that way we're trying to get this straight edge with the center line mark here. So we're gonna take half off of both sides, and we're gonna do that with the bandsaw, 45 degrees. And yeah, that should work. All right guys, so what we did is we went ahead and cut a 45-degree notch there, and then did a little relief on the tip to clear the fillet weld. Then up here at this end, we did another 45-degree cut. So when you set it in there, this is what you get. You get that chopped into the corner there, fit nice, and then this lines up on center line here. So we're gonna do the same thing to the other tube, and they should join nice and flush in there, and then we'll get them tacked in. All right guys, so we got the tubes placed in here. Really happy with how everything fit. One thing I did notice is that this tube, what happens is when you get the two tubes in there, you have a hard time clearing this tube to swing it in. So I just relieved the back corner of that and got it stuck in. Did place a couple tacks on the tubes so they're not going anywhere, but yeah, really happy with the fitment, really happy with the look. That's gonna do it for this episode, basically with this 3-link design. If you have any questions or anything like that, reach out to me in the comments, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. The lower links, the lower link mounts, the upper brackets, everything looks real good. So pleased with the design. I think it's gonna be plenty strong. And yeah, in the next episode, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work into getting the rear fitted into the truck. And I have the rear on order. I'm excited to get that in. And then we will start laying the brackets out on that and then continue with the 3-link. So if you guys like this episode, please like and subscribe. Leave any comments about things that you see or questions that you have, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again.